Today, I'm going to tell you the story of Elmer J. McCurdy, a carnival attraction for over 65 years, later discovered to be a real human body, the Funhouse Corpse. Elmer McCurdy, dubbed the Bandit who wouldn't give up, was born of wedlock January 1st, 1880, in Washington, Maine, to 17-year-old Sadie McCurdy. Sadie was unmarried at the time of his birth, unknowing of the identity of McCurdy's father, with one possibility being her blood cousin, Charles Smith, who McCurdy would later claim as an ally to his crimes. To save Sadie from the social stigma, her brother George McCurdy and his wife Helen adopted Elmer. Sadly, George died when Elmer was just 10 years old, and Sadie and Helen moved with Elmer to Bangor, Maine. Soon after, Sadie revealed to Elmer his father's identity, causing teenage Elmer to become unruly and rebellious, beginning his life of crime and alcoholism. Eventually, Elmer moved in with his grandfather, becoming a plumber's apprentice. He was a good plumber, however, a few years later, he lost his job to economic downturn near the end of 1898. In 1900, his mother Sadie died from a ruptured ulcer following his grandfather's death 2 months later. A devastated Elmer left Maine and began drifting around the eastern part of the United States, working occasionally as a plumber and coal miner, which would later be his demise. Unable to keep a job due to his alcoholism, McCurdy found himself in Kansas working part-time as a plumber. In 1907, he enlisted in the United States Army, assigned in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where he was trained to operate machine guns and use nitroglycerin explosives, being honorably discharged after just 3 years in 1910, moving to St. Joseph's, Kansas. There, he found an old army buddy, and within just a few months, both were arrested for possession of burglary tools in November of 1910, stating they were tools to invent a new type of machine gun. Elmer McCurdy was acquitted of all charges and released from the county jail in January of 1911. It was then that he embarked on his life as an outlaw. With his military training, McCurdy incorporated nitroglycerin into his robberies, targeting mainly banks and trains. However, he often failed to correctly determine the proper amount to use, causing him to relocate to Lenapaw, Oklahoma, in March of 1911 with 3 other men. He would later reconnect with an old friend, Charles Rivard, near Bartlesville, Oklahoma, where he stayed in a hay shed on the property for the next few weeks, drinking heavily. McCurdy's final robbery took place on October 4th, 1911, near Okesa, Oklahoma, targeting a caddy train containing $400,000 in cash royalty payments. Mistakenly, Elmer stopped a passenger train instead, where the 2 men were only able to steal $46, 2 whiskey bottles, a revolver, a coat, and the conductor's watch, later being named one of the smallest robberies in train history by a news article. The disappointed McCurdy returned to Rivard's ranch on October 6th, where he began drinking the whiskey he stole with some of the ranch's hand. While being diagnosed with tuberculosis, which he had developed after working in the mines, along with a mild case of pneumonia and trichinosis. Unbeknownst to McCurdy, he had been linked to the robbery, and a $2,000 reward for his capture was issued. In the early rising of October 7, 1911, 3 deputy sheriffs, brothers Bob and Stringer Fenton and Dick Wallace, tracked McCurdy to the hay shed using bloodhounds surrounding the head shed, waiting till daylight. In an interview, Sheriff Bob Fenton recalled, "It began at 7 o'clock. We were standing around waiting for him to come out when the first shot was fired at me. It missed me, and then he turned his attention to my brother. He shot 3 times at Stringer, and when my brother got under cover, he turned his attention to Dick. He kept shooting at all of us for about an hour. We fired back every time we could. We did not know who killed him. McCurdy was killed by a single gunshot wound to the chest while laying down. After his death, his body was never claimed, so a funeral director embodied it with arsenic and displayed it for customers, later sold to various travel carnivals and haunted houses, finding its final resting spot in Long Beach, California at New Pike Funhouse Amusement Park. His body hanged as decoration for years without customers or workers realizing it was real human remains. Workers repainted and moved him regularly with phosphorus paint and decorated it as various props, while children played with it, surprised of how real it looked. In December of 1976, during the film of The $6 Million Man, a crew member moved the mannequin, causing the arm to fall off, revealing human bone, later to be confirmed by a medical examiner. Over 65 years, he stayed as a carnival attraction to America before being discovered. He was then finally laid to rest at Summit View Cemetery, Oklahoma in 1977. This is a real urban legend that you can look up. This actually happened. If y'all want to see or hear more urban legends, let me know.